Welcome back to Live from Paris here at France 24. It is Friday, that means it's fashion for our culture show. Jessica Michaud, our fashion critic, is here with us in the studio. Thanks for coming in this morning.
My pleasure.
This week, of course, you're wrapping up everything that's been happening at Paris Fashion Week. What is the final verdict? It ended on Wednesday.
Yes, well, I can tell you one thing that hasn't changed is that there's still celebrities sitting in the front row. It's as popular as ever. We're looking at images here of Jennifer Lopez being photographed at the Chanel show, but it could easily just have been Kate Moss at Saint Laurent show, Kanye West at Givenchy, or Emma Stone at Miu Miu. Fashion houses are still really liking to link themselves with real stars, whereas on the catwalk, there are very few, actually almost no supermodels still walking the runways. Today's designers really want the clothing to be the center of attention, not the models who are wearing the collection during the show. But let's get back to those celebrities. We were wondering, after they get past the gauntlet of photographers, what exactly do they do with themselves while they're sitting there watching the show? How do they enjoy it? What do they see? So we talked to one of them who's walked the runway and is also a very popular French actress, Laetitia Casta, about what she thought of the Chanel show. So let's take a listen.
We always know we're going to see a good show. I love the stage, I love the singer, the music. It was pretty magical. It was like entering into a whole new world. And there were some beautiful pieces. I saw a black chiffon coat I liked, some shoes I really enjoyed, and a framed transparent bag, which was very nice. That's it. It's always nice to see a catwalk.
Laetitia Casta there talking about the clothes that she's appreciated this week. She was also talking about a singer that she liked. Who's she talking about?
Well, she's actually referring to, somebody named Ruth Radley from a Portland group called the Chromatics, and she was actually singing live at the Grand Palais for the Chanel fashion show. Once again, Chanel pulled out all the stops when it comes to the set. If you take a look at it, you can see that this time the designer Karl Lagerfeld was inspired by the power of wind and the energy of the sun. He put 13 giant wind turbines on the catwalk, which he turned the catwalk into solar panels. And this season at Chanel, the shape was very rounded, forms from hula hoop shoulder bags to A-line dresses with crop tops that sat above very slim dresses. But the look was very structured, a little bit less embellishment than we're accustomed to seeing from Chanel, but very much in keeping with the times we live in, a very modern aesthetic. We actually talked to Karl Lagerfeld after the show about how he came up with the concept for this season's collection. So let's take a listen.
Everything I do comes spontaneously. I don't think about marketing. I listen to my inner voices, kind of like Joan of Arc. It's good to be well dressed all the time. It's not, I'm going to a party, I want to be smart, and the rest of the time I can be slovenly. I don't agree with that.
Karl Lagerfeld, they're supposed to be relying on solar power. Unfortunately, it's not been very sunny here in Paris for the past couple of weeks. Let's talk about the real big story at Paris Fashion Week, and that was the build-up for a battle royale between Heidi Slimane for Saint Laurent and Raf Simons for Dior. Both men were showing their first ready-to-wear collections for their respective houses. What was the upshot of all that?
Okay. Well, it's interesting, just to give you a little backstory. The reason why we thought the arrival of these two men in these two important houses would be such a radical change is because they both have a very distinctive and similar aesthetic. They both favor a minimalistic, rigorous view of fashion. And it's also interesting to note that both of the men actually come to women's wear from menswear. They both started as menswear designers. Now, the first man of the two to show was Raf Simons at Dior. And the designer built a huge tent out by the Invalides right in front of the tomb of Napoleon. And Simons continued to explore the concept of the bar jacket, which is, of course, from the famous New Look collection that Mr. Dior himself did in 1947. He first took up the idea of the New Look and the bar jacket in his haute couture show this summer. But what was great about this collection is that he kind of loosened up the silhouette, the concept a bit. He wanted to explore the idea of liberation through the clothing. So that meant having clothing that was cut rounded shapes, A-line look. He really wanted to show movement in the show. But what's also great about this collection is that we saw more of Raf in the collection, less an homage to the past and more looking towards the future of what Raf looks for, what Mr. Simons wants to have for the future of the brand. So we actually talked to Raf Simons after the show about this whole idea of movement and where he sees the collection going in the future. So let's listen to that.
As Mr. Christian Dior always was so obsessed with giving a lot of movements on the hip, I thought of doing a jacket that looks like a dress as much as possible. It's very strongly connected to his codes. Ligne A, ligne Bach, ligne H. And voila, they are jackets, but if you wear them as a single piece, they are dresses.
That was Raf Simons. What about his rival, if you will, over at Saint Laurent? How did Heidi Slimane do? I heard mixed messages, I have to say.
Yes. Well, what was really the talk, actually, the buzz before the show started was the fact that the front row was a bit different than usual. Most of the show venue was actually quite small, so a number of people who had been accustomed to having front row or second row seats found themselves with standing row only seats. So that caused quite a lot of people to get their backs up. But you have to make room for all of the celebrities who want to attend the show. There was everybody from politicians to celebrities. We saw photos there of Valérie Trudel, but the actual show itself was all about two silhouettes. One was the smoking, and the other were these dresses that we're seeing were these kind of fluid, gypsy, hippie chic designs from the 1970s, and that was really the inspiration of Hedi Slimane. 1970s, which was the heyday of Mr. Saint Laurent himself. Hedi also really likes the 1970s and the kind of rocker chic look. The collection, with those two silhouettes, what he did was he broke it down and then inserted iconic pieces of Saint Laurent into those two specific styles. So you would see a caftan, you would see a chubby fur coat, you'd see a see-through silk peasant shirt or a safari jacket. So that's how Hedi kind of brought the history of the brand to the collection. It was much more of a homage than it was of a vision of his own idea of where the collection will be going. So I'm hoping that next season we'll see more of Hedi and a little bit of Mr. Saint Laurent in the collection next season.
Okay. Now, Jessica, over the past 9 days, you yourself have had a very busy past 9 days. There were hundreds of shows.
Yes.
You went to many of them, as far as I believe. Which stood out for you particularly?
Well, I would have to say Dries Van Noten is top on my list. The collection that he did was inspired by the Seattle-based grunge movement of the 1990s. He really did a masterful mix between the lumberjack prints and beautiful floral patterns to come up with a collection that was really beautiful and melancholy at the same time. Then Gareth Pugh, who did a beautiful collection. He's very much a goth designer, but this season was much more romantic, inspired by flamingo dancers and cockfighting, if you can believe it. So very wonderful collection there. And then Jean-Paul Gaultier was inspired by the 1980s and all of the muses from that era, from Madonna to Annie Lennox. And that show was definitely something to be seen. But the collection, the clothing itself was very much the codes of the house, but it was really much about the show than it was about the clothing on the runway.
And very quickly, the goal of the show is always to make a big impact.
Yes, absolutely. You can see a lot of boring shows, but you hope, because you're seeing so many, that soon you're going to see some that you really love. And one of the highlights for me was Heider Ackermann's show, that even the photographers put down their cameras to clap at the end of the show, because it was a very poetic, slow-paced, moody collection, which is interesting to point out that it was all in black for a spring-summer show. So that was an interesting touch for Hedi, but a fantastic collection, that one as well.
Not very summery, though, it has to be said. We've run out of time, I think. We don't have enough time to talk about Tilda. We do have enough time. I'm being told we do have enough time to talk about Tilda Swinton.
Great, because that was one of the biggest things that people were talking about, but it wasn't actually a fashion show. It wasn't on the official calendar. It was a collaboration between Olivier Sayard and Tilda Swinton, who created a presentation called The Impossible Wardrobe. And what the actress did is she walked down a catwalk with some beautiful archival pieces from the Musée Galliera, which is where Sayard is a curator, and pieces like Napoleon's coat, a fur collar that was once belonged to Sarah Bernhardt. And the whole concept was the idea of what defines beauty, what makes something beautiful and timeless. And it was an amazing one exceptional moment of fashion that will not be repeated.
A dramatic moment as well,
yes,
by the looks of it. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. It has been a busy couple of weeks for you. Perhaps you deserve some rest. If you want any more details about the various fashion issues that Jessica has raised, do check out her blog, nowfashion.com, or Twitter, Jessica Michaud, where she is easy to find there. That's all we've got time for in this bulletin. And live from Paris, more news, though, and headlines in just a couple of minutes here at France 24. Do stay tuned.